case, I want to build a side project. I have done enough POCs, and it is just a reflection based upon the book named Running Serverless by Gotchko Asik. He is actually an AWS hero, and he owns the site named mindmup.com. This book is about 250 pages, and it's mostly like 90% about AWS Lambda and a bit of static hosting here and there. But where he builds a site where you can upload a image and get a thumbnail out of it. But I want to build more of a full stack application, so I'll be covering AWS Lambda, AWS DynamoDB, AWS API Gateway, and static hosting using AWS Amplify. I want to build a full stack application. Just the difference is I want to use AWS Serverless Application Model, just that what is used in this book. Serverless application model is, you can compare that to Terraform, where you want to maintain your infrastructure as a stack, as a code. So you write a specification in YAML and push it in, and the whole stack is created under one name, and we can enhance it, delete it, deploy it, whatever you want as a whole. So you don't need to go into the AWS console, clicking buttons to create IAM policies, all this, you know, right? So serverless application model, just like OpenAPI spec or GraphQL, is a specification written in YAML. So that being said, this is the template anatomy. It supports global, description, metadata. It's just an extension of CloudFormation. That being said, you can actually mix and match serverless as well as CloudFormation transformations within the same YAML. But for you to write a YAML specification from the scratch, you need to basically understand the number of parameters available for you, the properties available for you to configure to come up with one simple Lambda function. And there are a lot of excellent AWS GitHub repositories where you can learn about it, and the documentation is actually very good. But I found this site named Stackery.io, where you can actually drag and drop resources to create the specification in the backend. So you just need to create a table. For example, I just dragged and dropped a DynamoDB, a table from here. And if I want to say that I want this particular serverless function to write into this DynamoDB table, I just need to connect it here, and the connection is done. And when you go to the backend, you can see that the specification has been written somewhere in the bottom. I just can't search it here, and you can actually create. So what I've done here is I have done API that will talk to certain Lambda functions and write and read out of AWS table. This is the basic specification what I wrote, and I can connect that to my GitHub repository, and when I commit it, it will load it in my GitHub with all the basic framework for me to start writing the actual business what I'm trying to implement. Talking about business, I want to implement something called as I said before, I want to implement a full stack application. So I came up with the idea of writing an application for a food truck. You can just add things here. These are all mock data right now. I didn't connect it. It's running in my local. And I want to also talk about why I chose Vue.js over React and Angular. And finally, as a part of the serverless thing, to give it just a niche, I am deploying this whole application as a static content using AWS Amplify. So if you read this book, you'll be able to do this because you just get the idea, and you're just expanding on top of that. But this is what I'm going to build. I have done all my POCs, and it was very feasible. And this whole application can be deployed to the world, to any food truck, because for free of cost, because I don't think anybody will be able to hit like a million items in a month or so, because we have the threshold given to you by all these serverless components are really high for certain applications what you want to build. So that's what we're going to build, and I'm going to release that in the form of both Medium blog as well as YouTube videos. But this is the whole idea of a side project I'm building, and let us see how it goes. And this is more of a commitment video where I just want to make sure that I just deliver what I promise. Go to Lambda, create a function, Name it as September 2nd demo, and 2. I already have one. And then now I'm just going to go with the Node.js runtime because that is what we'll be using for creating this application. So it's creating. So it took like 10 seconds for creating this, and now we have it here. And let us say 2nd September, just to make sure that we call it right function. We're going to save it, and everything is wired properly. Let's go ahead and create a new API gateway. New API gateway API. Let's go ahead and create a REST API, and then from the scratch, I'm going to say September 2nd demo 2, and then I'm just going to go ahead and go with the defaults, and resources action. Okay, let us create a method in the root resource. Let us say get, and we're going to go with lambda function. I already have second demo to what we just created. Save it. Now giving access for API gateway to invoke the lambda function. And then let's go ahead and test it. And then when you test, it gives you hello from lambda, second step. And if you want to promote this to open this to real world, let's go ahead and say deploy API. Choose a new stage, and let us say it's called dev, and then nothing to be given here. And now it's deployed. If you open the link says hello from lambda, second September. This is how you do it. So these are all the steps you need to do. You need to get into the AWS console and do it. The alternate way of doing this is using SAM, which is the Serverless Application Model, where you can do the same thing using a bunch of YAML code. Let us do that. Now let us look at the SAM, Serverless Application Model. I'm going to use the term SAM hereafter. Now let us look at how do we do the same thing using SAM. So I installed SAM in my machine using the instructions given here. I have a Mac OS. So, and in that itself, we have 4 different flavors of installing. I used Homebrew for installing my SAM CLI. I have my AWS credentials set up in my users folder under the .aws config file. And then now this is what we're going to do. Pretty much the same thing what we did. Create a lambda function, put it behind the API gateway. And how do we do that in a SAM way? So SAM init. So let us say SAM init, and let us choose the option 1. And I'm going to go with the Node.js runtime implementation. The sample application, let us say step second, and it is going to ask us what kind of template I want. Do I want a template for step functions or just lambda or whatever it is? I'm going to just choose the first one. The hello world example, just what we did, and it is now created. If you go back into the, let us see what is created. Okay, we have this folder, second. I'm going to open this in Sublime Text and show you how the direct. I have opened the template YAML file here. Let us start from here. Line number 2, transform AWS Serverless. This means that this particular YAML file is a file that is very specific to serverless application model. Description means it can be anything. Globals, this is very unique to serverless application model, which means that it is not present in CloudFormation template. So there are 2 templates, CloudFormation template and serverless application model is an extension of the CloudFormation template. So you can actually mix and match. I don't know whether we can put SAM functions in CloudFormation, but you can definitely use the CloudFormation template resources in SAM, most of them at least. So the resources so what this globals basically means is we are setting up certain properties globally. So when they say function in a serverless template, it means it's a lambda function. And for a lambda function, they're setting a template, they're setting the global property, a timeout property for 3 seconds. So any function this SAM is creating will be having a 3 seconds default timeout. Resources, so resources this is the core part of the YAML where we create all the resources we want, API gateway, lambda function, DynamoDB table, what you want to have in one stack what you want to call as one single application lives in this area. So hello world function is the function name that we have given, and we are letting SAM know that this name is given to a lambda function. That is what this means. This is not a table, this is a function. So what are the properties here? So properties are code URI, which means that we are telling SAM when it creates the lambda function where exactly to extract code and create the lambda function in AWS console, which means that I have a repository here. I have a sample repository here. In that I have the code base what I want within the folder named hello world. That's what it means. And handler. So when this lambda function is called, which function do you want to execute? Where's the code? So this is what this line handler means. So app.js is the file. That's why we have mentioned the term app here. And lambda handler, dot lambda handler. So within the app.js file, we have something called, so this is just basically a method name. So you have a like sample method. You can just name the same method here. So that's how it works. And we are telling the runtime is Node.js and events. This is where we mention what are all the events that trigger this function. So in that we have defined something called as an API. Just like type function, we have something called as type API, which means that an API gateway call will be able to trigger this function, and that API gateway call will be we will be calling the API gateway on the hello resource using the get method, and that call will trigger this function is what we are telling. We can also do the opposite way. We can define an API and then we can call the lambda function. That is what we did in the front end. This is just the opposite. This is also possible. So API first or backend first kind of design. So here we are doing like backend first kind of design. We designed the lambda function and now we are designing the API. And our outputs is for us, the consumers, where SAM takes care of most of the stuff like creating the IAM roles, assigning the permissions for the API gateway to invoke these functions. Everything is taken care by a SAM. So, but if we want that variables to be passed into some other function, so we can have a bunch of SAMs making up a very complex application. So some other application needs this variable. We will extract that out of SAM using something called as output. So I know that you're creating a lot of things for me when I mention this function, but let me know the ARN, the resource identifications as an output. So we get, for example, say that I want the ARN. ARN is the ARN means the Amazon resource some N. I don't know what N stands for, which says that this is the unique identifier which identifies a resource in our AWS account. So SAM creates that for us, and we want that to be passed to some other function, or we want to store it somewhere, or we're developing a UI to make the whole thing possible, and we want this UI to display this value, whatever the use case can be. But if we want to extract the ARN what SAM created, this is how you retrieve it. So output is a place where you retrieve all the parameters or values what SAM created for you. This is all here. Now let's go and see what we need to do. So SAM build. So now let's go ahead and do SAM build. Okay, so it's building the function now. The next step is SAM deploy guided. Now let's go and use SAM deployed guided. It will be asking us a bunch of questions. So let us say that September 2nd stack. I'm just doing use one, and I'm giving the confirmation to do whatever it wants. Yes, allow creation. Have yes, this default. Yes, save arguments in some terms. Okay, fine. So this function, this all means that let me go ahead and read it. So where do you want this function to be created? Do you want to confirm before creation? Allow SAM CLI. So SAM, you're allowing SAM to create IAM role for you. So you may not have authorization defined. You define yes. Save arguments. So SAM config toml. Okay. And now, yep. Okay. Now it has created something called as a change set. For those who know Terraform, this will be like a cakewalk. So you have defined everything whatever you want to define in a YAML file. And now let's go ahead and do just give yes. The SAM CLI in your local, sitting in your local, which has access to your AWS ID and password, is asking your permission to can I go ahead and deploy this into your AWS account. I'm giving yes. And since it's a very lightweight application what we are creating right now, we are almost done. So for this, so the whole chunk, as I said before, lies in this like 11-12 lines. This is what all you have. And this happened after I gave yes. It created the IAM role, created the function, initiated the API, gave permission to the Lambda, gave permission to API gateway to invoke the Lambda deployment. It is deploying that to a stage, and then all the SAM has just done a lot of things for us, and this is the output I mentioned. So it has given the output ARN for the IAM function. It has given the API what I will be invoking right now to see what the output is, and here is the ARN of the Lambda function. So let us go ahead and invoke this and see. Hello world. This is what we did. So now if you go back and say that hello world second deployment, and let us save, and then let us come back to this window, SAM build, and it will build it, and then we give SAM deploy. Guided, again answer the bunch of questions. Yes, 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 yes. Instead of using guided, if you are able to predefine these values using the -FN arguments options, you don't need to answer these questions every time. Just give it in a single argument, it will be going through. And now the changes are happening. And it has found out that the changes has happened only in this function, and this will affect the API. So I'm going to give it didn't sense any other changes in this application. So it's happening right now, and it's done. So now if you curl hello world second deployment, so even if you want to put this in the browser, let us see. It's here. Hello world second deployment. And if you want to go ahead and see what's going on in the API gateway, you can see the functions, whatever we defined, the API what was created. What is today's date? Okay, this is the stack we created, second stack, and all this has been done for you by SAM. And we have the stage, we have prod stage, all the stage. So everything was done based upon just this code. So that's it. That's how you create a simple SAM based API gateway and Lambda integration with just like 39 lines of code without even opening the AWS console. This is fine. And if you want to create a Lambda function, you just need to go here, SAM specification, template anatomy. If you want to create API, we just saw like 3 to 4 properties here, but Lambda function has actually these many properties. So, and when you, for example, if you want to go and take what does definition URI mean, and if you want to understand a sample for that, you can all go all the way down and see how it is all wired together. But according to me, for a new learner, it will not be that fast and that easy to do this. That's why, and especially for the full stack application, whatever we are creating, we are going to do a bunch of complex stuff. I mean, in the sense like for a beginner, it will be a complex one. We can't just keep on going and referring YAML, referring YAML, doing and all. So with that's when we are going to use the site named Stackery.io. Stackery.io is a way of creating serverless applications, and a drag and drop kind of feature is given for you to generate this YAML file. And we're going to see how we're going to use it. Before I show you what I'm going to do here, let us first of all go to our UI and see what are all the endpoints we want to create here. I don't want to tie to any user here because you're just going to go and order food. You don't give out your names in MACD, right? So you're going to go and order. So when I click an item, the order is getting created. The the order is getting built here. So now what I have identified is, from the front-end purpose, I need just two endpoints. The first endpoint is to display the list of items. Item I define as item will be having four properties: the item image URL, the item name, the item price, and the item UUID for the backend usage. And second one is the create order post method. So we have a get items method and then post order method. Those are the two URLs I'm going to create from the front end purpose. The backend will be creating one more method for creating an item, post item, but I will not be exposing that as a interface in the front end. This is all we're going to do: create item, display the item list, create an order. That's it. We're going to do that using Stackery. If you want to do everything manually by referring to the SAM spec and do it yourself and create this complex, and if you want to create that YAML file all by yourself, it will take time. But how do you do that? How do you speed that up is what I want to talk about. I'm really glad that I found out this website. Let us see. This guy is actually online. Chase Douglas is actually online. He will reply to your questions right now. So this makes your life easy. I am not using this file, this particular application all the way. It is much more powerful than what we're going to look right here. But what we're going to do here is, as I said before, we need three endpoints. And then let us see now. Let us see what we're going to do here. Let us say that I'm just naming it rename. Okay. I'm going to name it as September 2nd demo. So as I said before, we want three endpoints. So we're going to define an API. This is going to be a REST API. And that REST API, we're going to name that as Sep2nd demo API. And then as I said before, we need two post methods. The first one is for creating the item. The second one is for creating an order. The third one is for displaying the items. That's it. We don't have any other endpoints. We're going to enable CORS because we're going to call it from the UI application, which will be deployed in AWS Amplify. And then I can actually define this using the Amplify's URL, domain origin, but I'm just going to keep it everything simple. Save it here. And so now you have it. So if you go back to template and see, things are getting wired in the back as per the serverless SAM template. Now go ahead. Let us say that I want to create three Lambda functions. Again, it is your choice. You can keep all those three functions within the same Lambda handler using switch cases or whatever way you want, default clauses. But I'm going to go the other way and create three different functions. And let us say the first function name is get items. And let us say this is the get items function. And the handler name will be get items. I don't have any layers. Layers is like Maven dependency. If you're a Java developer, you can use other SAM specifications, SAM applications, and use that as a utility in your, that is getting too much into your Lambda world. Get items, and then you have post item, or you can just create a create item. Come on. I'm just using Node.js runtime. Let us say it's create item and then create item, and again same. And now the last one, create order. Let us say create order and create order. Save it. So now let us define the backend. A simple table It is the DynamoDB table is what we're going to have here. Again, we can have a single table and use that, so figure out a way to store all data in single table, but it is serverless. We don't need to have different partition keys. I'm going to say this as a orders table, and I'm going to say it is going to hash key is going to be order ID. It's going to be string type, and then we're going to have another table called items table, and we're going to say item ID will be the hash key. Save it, and I think we just need 2 tables. Now this is the interesting part. This is the part what I love. So what I'm going to say is, let us keep all the things here. It will be easy for me to drag and wire. Okay, now I want to create an item. So create item will be when someone invokes that endpoint, I want to call this lambda function, and when this lambda function is is invoked, I want to create a item in the items table. That is why. And now when someone wants to get a list of items, I'll be calling the get items list, which will be querying the same table, right? And then when someone is going to create order, I'm going to call the create order function, which will be writing into the order table. So post item will be creating an item in the items table. Get item will be getting the items from the items table, and order create order will be creating the will be invoking the create order function orders table. So template. If you go back to the template, this is what has been it has created. It is following the OpenAPI spec 2.0. We still have 3.0 out there, but for this demonstration, this is fine. I will later have some kind of a video on how to create an OpenAPI 3.0 based spec for this purpose, but that is not the scope here. So what you see here is what you get. So if you want to do this all by yourself, you need to go to the SAM specification, refer everything line by line, and especially for a beginner, and do it yourself. But now we have everything here. Now if I go ahead and save it to Git, go to Git. Mine is a GitHub. I have already given authentication. Let us see. Okay, yeah. And I'm going to give a save commit. If I go back to my GitHub, the Git version has been created. And if I just click there, it will take me there, and it is sitting there for me. So if you go back to the SRC folder, we have the create lambda sitting for us right there. And then we have the create order lambda sitting there. And then we have obviously the get items. It is now our job to wire all these things properly using the code what we want to do. We will be setting up the workspace using basically Sublime, nothing much, and see how to wire our next steps. The first endpoint is going to be the endpoint that is going to display all the items, the image, the description, the price and all. And then there will be a backing endpoint which will not be exposed using the front end, which is basically creating the item. Post item endpoint, get item endpoint for the list of items, post item for creating an item. And then finally, whenever you add something to your cart and place the order, we want to create an order in the backend. So we're going to create a post order endpoint. So going back to Stackery, I'm going to start from the scratch really quick. Add a resource. We're going to have an API. It's going to be a REST API. And I'm going to name the API as SAM food truck API, and then it's going to have 3 endpoints. The first one is going to be a post item endpoint for creating an item, and then we'll be having a get item endpoint for getting a list of items, and then creating a order endpoint for creating an order from the front end. Enable cards, ideally I can have this star pointing to the domain where I'm going to host the UI application. This is basically the AWS Amplify, but I'm just going to leave it a star for now because that's not the scope of the item. And then we're going to save it, and we have the YAML getting generated in the backend. Let's go ahead and create the remaining lambda. I'm going to go with the individual lambda functions for all 3 different items. Flows, create item, and this will be the logical ID. That will be the function name. I'm going to have it as index.handler, whatever it is. No other, just accepting the defaults, saving it. I'm going to do the same thing for the remaining two. Get items, and then the function is going to be get item, folder name will be, and it's going to have the default over here, same. And then finally create order, and then the function, the source path will be create order, taking the defaults and saving it. The remaining two things are the tables. DynamoDB table, we're going to have first one is going to be the items table, and the primary key will be the item ID because it's hash key. We don't have any sort key here. And then we are going to have a second table named as orders table, and it will be order ID of string type, and I'm saving it. Now let us wire together. So when a post order endpoint is called, we'll be calling the create order method, and it will be storing the value in the orders table. And then when get item endpoint is called, it will be calling the get items function, and it will be storing the value in the items table. Finally, when you want to create an item, use the post endpoint to create item. The item will be saved in the items table. And now I'm going to save this whole repository into the Git. I have already chosen GitHub as my repository. Authenticate a Stackery to create a repository over there. Okay, I have a name. I need to rename this. Rename to SAM Food Truck Endpoints. Update it and save it. So GitHub again. And saving it. If I now go back to the revision, you can see the repository has been created in my GitHub repo. And let me go ahead unpack this using my local Git, and let us explore the directories whatever has been created for us by Stack. I have imported this repository into my local Git, and it is up and ready. I have opened that in my Visual Studio, Visual Code editor, and we can see what has been created for us by Stackery. And this is the template YAML. What you see here is Swagger 2.0 way of, you just copy this whole thing and put it in Swagger hub and start to define API over there. It will still work. Just that it is following Open API Spec 2.0 compared to the 3.4 latest. But this is the template YAML. You don't need to understand any of this thing right now. But what we saw there, right here, all these drags and drops we did in within a minute resulted in this whole code base. And now if you just go ahead and do SAM validate, which is equivalent to verify whether my YAML file is all right, it will just go ahead and do it. Let us try to push this into our into my AWS thing. So SAM build, and then this will build the application, and then finally we can use the SAM deploy guided. Let us use the SAM deploy guided. So it will ask you a bunch of questions. SAM food app fine, default region, stack tag name. So the tag name is going to be prod, environment is going to be prod, API gateway stage name is going to be prod, and yes, I'm confirming everything. Yes, I'm allowing SAM CLI to create roles. Yes, this is fine. Get items may not have authorized. This is okay. Yes. Create order. Yeah, bunch of yeses. And now the deployment is starting. It's asking me permission to move this change set to my AWS account, and I'm going to give yes. And the account creation is starting right now. Now we see that it is all created, I will just take you to the AWS account and show you what are all the components that has been created by this SAM. The right place to look how it has been created is the CloudFormation, because as I said before, SAM is a extension of CloudFormation, and this is the name what we gave, SAM Food App Prime. And if you go ahead, you can see that the resources that have been created, we have this physical ID, we have the API gateway getting created, and we have these lambda functions that got created, the role, the create order lambda function, and then the get items lambda function, and then what else? Yeah, so this is the lambda function what we created, and it doesn't have any body. So whatever you see here in the code editor is what you see there. We are going to give life to this soon, and the API gateway now has an endpoint named SAM Food Truck API with prod. If you go to stages, you actually have stage and prod endpoints getting created, and you can actually hit the endpoints and get some blank results now. But let us start giving life to these endpoints by developing one endpoint at a time, starting with posting the endpoint. So we can also see the other resources like DynamoDB tables. So if you go back here, we also have these two tables getting created, which are the DynamoDB table, the items table. Do not worry about the name. What you see here, this is by default the name has been given. So this table is called the items table, and this is called the orders table. We just need to take this name and use it in our code so that the insertion happens correctly. We can also retrieve that using the outputs. So for example, if you go back to the stack, see the outputs here, you can actually define the outputs using the Stackery, I guess, to get what are all the actual names of the table that got created. But for now, we can use this name. You can navigate to your console and get this name. You can retrieve those things and start using that in your code. Now let us go ahead and give the life to the create item endpoint. Let's do that first. I want to show you how we can arrive at the sample message for creating an item. So this is a wonderful site I use for generating test data, but you can use it here. So we are going to give the job of creating the items ID to DynamoDB or the lambda function. But looking at the UI, we need to have an image URL, an item name, and a price. These are the three items what a sample record should look like. So now let's go ahead and say that what is the item name, and then what is the item price, and what is the item image URL. I'm going to use a public image hosting site to pull the URL from, but we can okay, let us see image URL. So the item name can be let us, for now, it's just a sample data I'm going to show you here. So let us say a company name. The item price will be a number. So number, this is a number. Minimum number is 2, the maximum number is 5. Decimal you can allow 2, and there are no blanks. And then item image URL, we're gonna choose URL, dummy image URL, and yeah, we don't need to have any other values. And if we go ahead and choose JSON and go ahead and preview, this is a sample message we are trying to create for a item. Let us go ahead and just keep it in one of my Sublime text. Let us go ahead and dummy wire this create item method. It's not going to be a async call, it's going to be a callback based. So let us add a callback here, and we're going to return the callback. We're going to assume a success message here and a sample message here. we will define the sample message here. So sample message, sample message. Since the API gateway call, we need to have certain entity properties here. Status code is going to be 201 for creating a resource, and then we're going to have the body, and the body is going to be let us define the body here. The body is going to have something called as a message, and the message is going to be the item with an ID was created. For this one, I'm going to replace that with, so we have the event. So if you go ahead and you use the SAM local generate event API, we're going to have this for API gateway, and it's going to be for API AWS proxy. No. So this will give you a sample message how it will look like when the Lambda function gets. So Lambda function will always expect the event, and since we are invoking this function using an API gateway, we can call the SAM local generate event API gateway AWS proxy, which will give you a sample event which this Lambda will be receiving. And to choose the unique ID for the event, it is a very good practice to choose the request context request ID. So it is a part of the event object. So we can just choose event dot request context dot request ID, which will make sure that it is unique in your world of AWS. And then this is the sample message we will be returning. And let us go ahead and SAM build this and SAM deploy this. Now that everything is moved, let us go to my AWS console and go to the stages, go to prod, go to the post item endpoint, copy the item endpoint, and then open Postman, create a new tab, choose post, paste it, and if you call it, the item with an ID 45587. So how many ever times you call it, it will give you a new ID, a unique ID. So this is behaving like a get call. We are not actually expecting anything back from a post, but still a message is given. We are supposed to send a body which will have the item name, item price, and image URL. We're going to do that, wire it with DynamoDB, and show how it is done. Now we have a working framework for the get item all wired up through Lambda and API gateway. Now we're going to go ahead and implement the DynamoDB part of it. Let's achieve this in an iterative way. So what we have here is we need the table name in which we are going to insert. We need the Dynamo API to insert, and we need to return the value. So the table name can be derived from the template YAML. So what you have here is the create item template, the resource template what we have here, whatever was created for us using Stackery. And if you look into the environment, it says that it is making a variable name table underscore name available to us, and it is referring to something called as items. So items is nothing but the actual DynamoDB table that is getting created. So if you search for items, it must be the name of DynamoDB table. Yeah. So it is referring to this items. That's the reason why it is referring to Please refer this table when I mean table name. So if you want that table name to be available for you in the Lambda function, all you need to do is copy the variable and use this. Table name is process dot n dot table name. That's all you need. And now we need a DynamoDB API to insert. Let us go to the DynamoDB documentation. Here I have the DynamoDB document client HTML. This is a high level API looking for put item. So we have a sample here. Let us copy that and keep it ready here. And the table name what we have here is the table name what we got, and we need to insert the item. The item is a term used for Dynamo. A single record is called item in DynamoDB. And we have what we have here. So we have our item will have image. Item. So what did we copy here? So it's gonna have item name, item price, item image URL, right? So it's gonna have item name. Let us have a sample name, placeholder, item price, and what is the other name? Item image URL. This is the name we decided. So this is what we have. So if you go back to my UI and if you inspect this, you'll get the image URL here. This is the image URL. So let us paste it here. You have the image URL. And now you're using a document client, AWS DynamoDB document client. But you need to import that, just like a Java, you need to import that when you want to use it. So we need the AWS SDK. So for this AWS to work, we need to include the AWS SDK. So now what we have here is the table name and the item getting inserted into DynamoDB. And what we're going to return here is, item ID. That is our hash key when we decided. And the hash key is going to be the event request context request ID. Sorry, I'm going back and forth, but this is our event. This is our item. Let us go ahead and push this using our usual way of SAM build and then go for SAM deploy. The stack has been updated now. Let us go to Postman and call the same endpoint. So now we are still getting a response. Let us click it 3 times. And now let us go back to our DynamoDB table. If you go back to the DynamoDB table, the items table, now if you refresh that, we have 3 items that got created, all with 3 different item IDs, but the same item image URL, item name, and item price. So now we have something which is raw and it is working. The next step we are going to do now is make all these things flow from the request itself. Let's go and modify the code to retrieve these values from our request. So now that we have seen that it is all working, the only task now left out is to make this dynamic in nature, so that we pick up the variables whatever we want from the event request. So the API request. So I'm going to use json.parse, and whatever we need is going to be present in the event request body, and I'm going to be sending item name, and then the same thing can be copied and pasted, and say it's going to be item price, and then we can say This will be something called as item image URL. So the event what we're going to send will be having a body, and the body will be having all these three variables in it as a JSON message. Let us go ahead and do the usual SAM build and deploy. We now see that the changes have moved. So now let us go to a DynamoDB table and clear that first. Let me go ahead and delete it. And we don't have any new items here. Now let's go to the Postman. And now we need to give a raw, even try body. Let us go to my sample message. What we have here, this one. And let us say in Postman. Let us paste this. And we can say pancakes. And 85 and send it. And another item, Backend 185. I'm just changing the image URL for no reason. And then let us create another item, scrambled eggs 385 and send it. So now see, we have a very good response times here. Now let's go back to the DynamoDB and see what happened there. Go ahead and refresh it here. You can see that we created scrambled egg, pancakes and bacon, and the prices whatever we give. So now we are done with creating an item, which is post item endpoint is done. Now we need to implement the get items, which is basically going to be a cakewalk, and then the create order. So with that, we'll be done with the API gateway. Let's go ahead and do the get items. So now we are done with the create item lambda function, and we tested it. And let's go ahead and implement the get items. So what we're going to do here is we're going to write an endpoint that will display all the items from this table. It's going to be a scan query. We are not going to write any a query where you will need to pass the exact UUID to get the item, but we are going to just display the whole item. Scan query is a costly query, but for our scope, this is more than enough. Let us go ahead and do it. So just open the documentation and have it ready. So to perform a scan, we have a sample here, and okay, let us put it here, and let us copy certain things from the previous function. We are going to have the same SDK, and it's not going to be an async call, it's going to be a request response cycle. So just paste that. What else we need from here? So we need a same constant. So what we're going to need here is the table name, the scan query, and then finally the return the data. Okay, the table name can be still copied from here. So how this is available is, again, if you go back to the template YAML and go to the get items, we have a variable name available to us, which is basically the items table name. We're going to use that. That's the reason why we have that here. The scan query. So we don't have any filter expression. We just want all the items from the table. So we just remove those things. The table name will be replaced here. So this is the scan query, and we're going to call the document high level API to do that. And we created the client, and let us, okay, we have it already here. Okay, fine. Now I don't like this way of doing it in single line, and especially for our needs, we're going to do a bunch of stuff here, maybe a couple of lines. Okay, let us build our const response is going to be for API gateway. You definitely need to send two mandatory parameters. This status code 200, and then the next one will be the body, and the body will be of JSON.stringify version of the data, whatever you're getting here, whatever you're getting here is going to be there. And when you query, when you do a scan query, let us see if I'm able to show you what I mean here. Start search. So I went ahead and from the documentation I was able to grab output of a scan query. When passed neat, this is what the response looks like. So we have the count, we have the items, we have the last evaluator key that is used for pagination, I guess. And so out of all these responses, the JSON message, whatever we got back from scan, we are interested only in this item, which actually holds the result of the query, whatever we placed, the scan query, whatever we placed. And especially it is going to be an array of objects. So now let us go to the code base and see how we are going to parse it. So now, as I said before, data has everything, and all we need is just the items. So this return doesn't really make any sense here. And within the else, the last will be the callback function. There is no error, so null, and then we are going to pass the response back to it. So now we have everything ready, and yeah, checks out. We are getting the table, building the scan query, executing the scan query, sending back. We are just covering the happy path. It is going to be a happy path. Let us go ahead and do a SAM build and SAM deploy, and I'll get back to you. Now we see that we have moved our changes. Now let's go back to the API gateway console. Open the stages, get the prod link, especially the get link, whatever you're trying here. Copy that, put that in Postman, and verify the output, whatever we want. It's going to be a new get call. Okay, get call, send. This is the output we want. The 3 items, whatever we inserted, we are getting it now. So we are done with creating item and getting list of item. Next, we will be implementing creating the order endpoint, and that will be the end of it. And we can just go back to the UI and start wiring things up. Now let's go ahead and implement the last missing piece of the API, which is the create order method. So we have the create item. I'm just going to copy that and paste it here. What will change here, because we have same handler name, this will be order ID, and then that is the name, that is the key for the DynamoDB table, whatever we have here. So we have the order ID, and now let's go ahead and define our sample message. So when someone places an order, say that it's going to be an iPad based order, touchscreen order, whatever it is. All I need is the item names. So say soda, and then we have this ice cream, and then let us say mac and cheese. And then we have another property, which is the order total, which is going to be, let us say, it's going to be a number 1699. This is our sample message, what we will be sending from order, or from the order screen. When someone clicks the place order button over here, we're going to execute this. We're going to capture those things in this line items in order total and send it over to the API. Now that we have this, let us go to the function. So we have only 2 properties. We don't need that, and this comes really handy, right? So line items, we're going to select the line items. We're going to name it as line items, and then we have the order total. The request body will be having order total, and this will be order total. Everything else, yeah, this will change. Your order number is okay. Still 201. It has been created. Nothing else changes. Let us go ahead and do the SAM build and deploy and call the API and see if it is going to be a good news. It has moved. So now let us go to the API gateway and open the stage, prod, post, copy the endpoint, promote to postman, create a new post endpoint, paste it, and the request body, the raw body will be, let us first post this, send it. Okay. If you notice, the first call will be around this almost a second. That is because there is a concept named cold starts. You can actually Google about it. Lambda cold starts. It means that when you first invoke lambda function after it has been created, there is a minimal time that lambda requires to put everything in place and start the function for you. So the subsequent calls will be really fast. So this is 131, so almost 90% down, fast. And then the third item. Let us go to DynamoDB and refresh it. There you have it. Do not worry about this. This is how it will look like when you consume this message, because S means string. A line item is an array of objects of which we are always using string as an object here. So I think there are only 3 to 4 different varieties what Dynamo supports: string, number, array, and something else. So now this is our order number. This is what has created. So we are now done with all the backend part of the application. So we can now display the items. In the backend, we can actually create new items, and then we can actually place the order. I didn't wire the place order button yet, and I'm just planning to bring up a pop-up saying that this is the order number. That finishes the application. We don't do any kind of Stripe or a PayPal payment over here. That is not our scope. But I can strongly say that we are done with the backend part for this application. Let us look into the UI part next, how to build up the screen. What is the easiest way to build the screen, even if you don't know anything about Vue.js or JavaScript, CSS, HTML, doesn't matter. Let us do that. Vue.js. I'll keep it crisp. I did consider using React and as well as Angular. But for my background, I was a full stack developer until 2014-15, and back then it was just 3 languages: JS, CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And we had this jQuery, and then we placed Ajax call the RESTful services, and that was the end of it. And I got into backend development, and when I came back in 2018-2019 timeframe, I just felt that I have drifted a lot from the UI world. So there was a UI framework with every alphabet combination. So, but when you do the research, you often hear the famous frameworks, namely Angular and React. But what I did was I started to try learning React.js first. Now when I don't see much difference between React as well as Vue, because my terms will be sloppy because I'm not a UI developer. But for a person who wanted to dip his toes into a UI world after a very long time, you can even consider it as a first time. It was kind of a surprise, a cultural shock, like how things have merged and diverged and came back in place. And now when I started learning React using a Udemy course from Maximilian Academind, the course was like 40 hours. So, and whenever you want to do a research on which framework to choose, I used Stackshare.io. Stackshare.io is a wonderful website where you can get to know a lot of tools out there in the market. Like what are all the tools available. You can do a research over there and get to know a lot of tools which is trending and all. So React is always the top. And there is also kind of a marketing going on there, because React as well as Angular or both backed by corporate giants, but Vue is groomed by a community of developers. And so I started learning React. I kind of felt it difficult, and whatever material I saw, it was over 20 hours, 40 hours, etc. So I found Vue.js, and then I think I found a sponsor somewhere who is sponsoring the website, because whenever you look at community-based tools like Spring Framework previously, now Spring is based upon, I mean, backed by Pivotal, but so Vue.js sponsors were like Vue Mastery, Vue School, and all, like, for example, yeah, here. So I tried Vue School first, and then I didn't like the courses, so I came back to Vue Mastery. So Vue Mastery has these courses which has they have the beginner path, the intermediate path, the advanced path. So for that mini project, whatever I have chosen, beginner path was more than enough. But so I chose the 1 hour course of Intro to Vue.js. It was really elementary. You will be surprised like how quickly you can put together a UI application. And then going to real world Vue.js was a complete transition, because whatever you learned in this course is all the basics, and that they will help you in the second course, but it will be a complete transformation into a real world production grade project. They introduce you to the Vue CLI, Vue UI, and all. So I started doing mastering UX, but I'm not a UI developer, and I don't want to go deep into it. So whatever I did with this project, whatever I have in place here, these actions, the total getting created, placing the order, something coming up, all these things I was able to do by just doing the first 2 hours of course. That is more than enough, and you need to have maybe a basic understanding of what JavaScript can do, what CSS can do, what HTML can do. So that is enough. So with that respect, from that aspect, I was able to find a very good material which will make my pace really fast, and to make such a deliverable easy. So that is why I chose Vue.js. I even try to search for documents where they compares React, Angular, and says Vue is the best. But it's like I don't want to be biased anywhere. I just went with what I found first. I tried React, but now when I see React after trying Vue, I don't see much difference. But that's the reason I chose Vue. In just a matter of 2 hours, I was able to put together an application which was, I was self-satisfied with the output, whatever I got, the ease, how I'm achieving this totaling function, how I'm able to click something, and after clicking, making everything go back to zero. These were done with very minimal lines of code. I'm pretty sure React has the same capability. But yeah, so that's the reason I chose Vue.js. I want to stop right there. Let us start with installing Vue. You can just Google and find out the way. I'm using a Mac. There are multiple flavors how you can install. I'm using npm install Vue. Vue comes up with a lot of goodies like Vue. If you don't like using CLI, you can use Vue UI to generate projects. I'm going to show that. And I'm using Vue 2.0, and Vue 3.0 is out, and looks like it is a complete rewrite, and there are a lot of talks about this specific API called as composition API, and you can learn about those things here. I forgot to mention something here. When you choose the beginner path, when you go to Vue Mastery, the first course is free. But to go to second course, I think only the 3 lessons are free there. For anything more than that, you need to pay. I paid for 1 month of subscription, and I was done in like 2 days. So I cancelled it, but it is still available for me for the next 20 days, I guess. I learned Vue 5 days ago, or maybe 10 days ago, I guess. So yeah, that is one point I want to mention. Now, since I have something already installed, let me go to my downloads directory. because that is the directory I always clear by the end of the day. And then I'll go run Vue CLI or Vue UI. When I run Vue UI, it will launch the Vue UI application, which is basically a Vue project manager in my localhost 3000, 8000. And if you go to the more option right here, you have the Vue project manager. Right now I have two courses. The first one is the course what I learned from Vue Mastery. The second one is what I created. New project I want to create under my downloads folder, and because that is a folder I clear at the end of the day. Name, I will just choose demo app, and then package manager is going to be npm. I think by default it is yarn, I guess. Yarn is yet another resource, I don't know, npm, and I don't want a git repository, but you can just have it as a git repository so that it will be having all those git init things done for you. Yeah, nothing of this sort is needed without. Okay, next. And then I know only Vue 2, so I'm choosing default preset for Vue 2. There is a Vue 3 and then a manual and remote preset. You need to know in and out of Vue at least some high level things like Babel, ESLint, where you want to keep the code pretty, the certain compilers will throw error. Create the project. Approximately it took about 5 minutes, I guess, 4-5 minutes. It could even be my connection. So if you go to Vue Project Manager, this is our application, and I'm going into it. So we have this plugins, dependencies, configurations, and tasks. Dependencies is like you can go ahead and search, just like a Maven dependency if you are in Java world, or Nugget if you are in the .NET world. You can just go and search for lint. You can start installing things. So go to install dependency, and you can search for. There are multiple utilities you can think of, and you can install them. So such a thing is JSON server. Yeah, I installed this because if you want to get your code running with a fake mocked API, you can install that. That's how you install it. Just go ahead and install JSON server, and those dependencies will be added to your package, just like your Maven POM XML for UI projects, especially those based upon Node.js projects. You will be having something called as package.json file, where you will be having those dependencies, and dependencies installed is the message what we get here. And plugins are like where you I think I added a plugin for Bootstrap. Yeah, this one, CLI plugin. Yeah, I think I used this. So where we are going to we are going to use a Bootstrap, which is basically a component library, beautified. Just it will make sure that you don't need to have you don't need to worry about the beautiful components in your UI. Like for your UI to look more appealing, they have a lot of components like the error message component, carousel, card, collapse, drop downs, jumbotron. You would have seen all these things in the recent applications. I used Bootstrap when it was in version 1.0 or 2.0, and now since this is a very famous component library, just like Material UI, they have a very specific version built for Vue framework. And when you see my UI screen, I have taken components from this screen and have modified the CSS color properties and made it look like this. I don't think I'm very good with colors, but this is what I come up with. So this is the card, what you see here. This is the code for that. I chose that, and that is the reason I have multiple cards here. And what you see here is called a jumbotron. Jumbotron is this one where you have it as a rectangle, but I have it in a vertical fashion over there. And then what else do I have here? I have this buttons. So button, I have this success button. and you can see it here, and blue means default. So button, the default color is blue. That's what I have, the primary. So these are the things I have used, mostly Bootstrap based. And for that to work, we need to add to the UI. You need to just include this plugin for that to work. So once you have this, I'm using Visual Studio Code. So let us go ahead and open the new application, whatever we just now created. So I know that it is in my downloads folder under the folder name demo. Open that. And here you go. So whatever dependencies you ask for will be present here. Never touch the folder. Public. Yep. So the key components are present here. So if you run the application, if you want to run this application, you need to go to the tasks. First, build it. So when you want to, I'm getting too much into Vue, but I'm just going to make sure that I don't talk a lot about it. But you start the application, you build the application. This step is necessary for you to deploy this application into a server of your choice, because the frameworks like Vue.js, React.js, Angular.js, all are there in place just to make your life easy, doing things with a certain kind of programmatical way. But end of day, you're going to deliver only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to the browser, because browser doesn't differentiate between this is a React application, Vue application, and all. So for that, you will be creating something called as a distribution. When you see here, dist folder is the final output with CSS, minified CSS, image, JS, all this index HTML. If you just drag this and put it in your browser, it will still work. So this is the folder which will be deployed to the server where you want to launch the UI application. So, but we will not be using that. We'll be using real-time UI, whatever we have here. So now let us serve the application, run the task, and let us see which port is being chosen here. I already have one application running. Let's see whether there's a conflict. Okay, so if you go to the output, okay, 8080. Okay, this is a sample application. What do you have here? So if you whatever is coming here is through the Vue framework. So if you go to the components, the app, what it is doing is it is having something called as a component, the hello world component. The hello world component is present into the hello world folder, and what you see here is the essential links, ecosystem, and installed CLI plugin. So if you see the UI, this is what this UI. So Vue.js, React.js, all these things are building UI like a stack, keeping one over the other, putting things together and mixing it and delivering it so that you can keep codes in a module fashion. So they have made a component called hello world view, and they have included that here. So if I include the component 3 times and save it, I think I can see the output immediately. See? So it is that easy nowadays, and I'm talking as if I'm very old, but that is the fact. It is very easy. So you whatever component you think of, even the smallest component like this, if you want to place a component over here, here, you just develop those components as separate files and register them and put it together in one place like a main application called app.vue. That is how I have put my application together. Now we're done with a basic project setup. Whatever change you do here, welcome to demo. It is that fast. So it is so reactive. So now let us go ahead and look into something called as a code pen. I want to talk about code pen because that is another place where you can hunt or poach for very good UI components, especially for Vue or any other UI framework. So it will make your life kind of easy. There is another website where you can go ahead and look for good UI, like professional level or code that are very intuitive, UI designs achieved with very minimal number of lines or very to give you ideas. Like for example, I was searching for view notifications. What I have here is one way of showing things that the order has been placed. But what I wanted to show was something like this. For example, if you can just go and search like view notification, and I wanted to do something like this, where you can actually have this code in place. So if you, it's a working code, it's just like any other fiddle. It is just a fiddle kind of website where you can just see what kind of output you're getting. The green shade, the red shade, the blue shade. So if you like this, you can fork it. If you have an account, you can fork it and do changes and then finally download. Or if you want to use it as such, you can just go ahead and export and export the zip. Looks like they have an embed option nowadays. And then you also have this pro, that is the overkill for whatever we have. So that is how you use code. And for example, if you want to use certain bootstrap features, like you can search for bootstrap cards. Where is my yes? Cards view, such like that. Nothing came up. Okay. Bootstrap card or view cards. So these are the examples what you can achieve using Bootstrap and Vue put together. So I'm pretty sure you'll be having, yeah. So what you have here is a Bootstrap component done in a Vue style. So if you just export this as a project, you will be given a Vue project with this output. You can then start wiring the actual logic instead of this hard-coded data. So that is one easy way of putting together an application, just copying and pasting, just like whenever we have an issue and whenever we have some kind of a very peculiar issue, we go to Stack Overflow and copy the code and put it and then learn about it. This is one way of doing the UI world. If you are not familiar with UI, this is a right place to start, and that is CodePen. JSON server is another plugin what I'm using here. We right now have a working API gateway because we did a backend first approach. And for example, for API first design, to design an API, and the UI team or whomever is going to consume our API goes in their direction, and we as developers who are going to develop the API backend go in our direction. And when we are both done with our sprints, we come back, just switch the endpoints and see that if our contracts match, and if we both worked on the same contract, our deployment will be successful. So until then, if you want to have sample data, JSON server is one way to do that. So let me go ahead and stop the application, whatever we have here. We are stopping it, and I'm going to start the application what I have, Bootstrap, because that also runs on 8080. Let me go ahead and run it, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, let me open that code in Visual Studio Code, because whatever UI you saw before that, this beautiful images with all these prices came in, it was from a mock data. So the purpose of a JSON server is that you go to my code base. I'll just show it and you'll get it immediately. You need to go ahead and create something called as some JSON file, and it should represent the same message whatever you're going to consume from the backend. So our assumption right now is the backend is not ready, so we created a sample mock data in this format. We are going to return something called as items, and it is going to give something called as a array of objects, and we will be consuming that in our JS using localhost 3000. So for you to serve the data, if you have installed this JSON, if you have installed this JSON server package, I think I can find an entry for that here. So if you have that ready in your local, you just need to go into the path, just type JSON server and db.json. I know I have my the Chrome has the memory of it, so if I go ahead and call localhost 3000 and items, I will not be getting any. But the moment I start this, here is it. JSON server db.json, it will start serving my the mock data. So if you go back to the browser and call it now, it is rendering the data, and if you refresh the application now, it is displaying what we have, what we want. So I will again go back to my code base and explain what each and every entity or component is in my screen. But what I'm saying here is, until your main API, the production API or development API is ready and you are a UI developer, JSON server plugin is an excellent component where you can mock the data and start wiring the UI. And once the backend actual endpoint is ready, you can just flip it and application just works. So that's about JSON server. I went to the Vue UI. I started the Vue UI, started the application, and I have this open in my browser. I have kept the developer tools ready. And I have this food truck application which is rendering this application. The code base is here, and this code base is what we first installed, demo project, whatever we did, the plain project from the Vue itself. So I'm going to just contrast and show you what I have changed. So the world, I deleted the hello world view and I created something called as food truck home screen view, and then I kept the app view as such, and instead of the hello world component, I'm telling use the food truck component, because app view is the mother component, the root component, which will display the other components in the way however you want to display. We have only one component, and that's the reason I have this here. I can still go ahead and divide the screen into multiple components, like the items will be one component, the order jumbotron will be another component, but I just want to keep it simple because the whole idea is we are building a serverless project. We are not building a production grade UI application. Being my UI skill is very sloppy. And then so to understand and what you see here is a services folder which I have added, which is not present in the by default one. Axios is an external dependency, just like the JSON server I showed you. Which makes your life easy for making Ajax calls or the RESTful calls, external system calls. You can compare that to the Feign client in Java world, or you can compare that with any client like Jersey client, or it's just a Ajax call done in a very more in a more high level API kind of format. And so right, I haven't even wired the order items yet. So just the get items is working. So that is the only difference. And we have the bootstrap Vue.js, the CSS, the button color, green color, blue color, all you see here is flowing from the bootstrap Vue.js component. And that was possible because I have added that plugin. If you don't have a plugin folder here, but you have a plugin folder here because I have added that bootstrap Vue.js plugin. Let me see if I'm able to show that for you here. Yeah, see, I have this plugin added to my project. So, and because since I added, it's not official version. These are the official plugins. This is the plugin what I added manually. So that is another difference. And Anatomy of a Vue.js file. A Vue.js file is a file that helps you build a component on a UI screen. So if you take this screen into account, what you see here is one component, the sidebar. The main body is one component. What you see here in the top, the add view router, add view X, all these things are called the nav bus, another component. So when you want to, and app view is a place where you go ahead and add all these three components, and they represent themselves in the way how they are built. So when I say that, you need to understand the anatomy of a Vue file. A Vue file is made up of all three languages that make up a UI application: the HTML, the JavaScript, and CSS. So you have the CSS code here, you have the JavaScript code within the script tag, and you have the HTML code under the template tag, you have the JavaScript code under the script tag, and CSS code under the CSS style tag. When I mentioned the term scoped, which means that whatever style I have mentioned here is applicable only for this component. So if I define a list HTML component anywhere outside this particular component, it is not applicable. So that is the word meaning of scope. It is self-explanatory. The colors, whatever you see here, title color, the yellow color, what you see here is flowing from the definition what I have here. And the background color for the cards, this crazy color, I don't know why I came up with this color, is coming from this. And leave that. The two important things you need to understand here is there is something called as binding. So for us, let us define the variables we have on the screen. The variables are the item description, the item price, a variable to store the order total, and what else? That's it. A variable to store the image, the variable to store the list of items to be displayed on the screen. That being said, we first need to come up with the variables what this component is going to have. Items variable will hold all these items being displayed here. Order is again items, but only when you click the add to cart, the order will be populated with whatever item was clicked. Total is one which was calculated on the fly, whatever is being displayed here. And then enable place order is when I first launch the application, I will not be able to click this place order button. For that, I have a Boolean variable, and that is I will talk about that in a few seconds. And then finalize total is for a programmatical convenience. I don't know what rule I'm breaking here, but I'm using that for a hack purpose, I would say. So now we have these variables that are used in this UI application, UI screen, and created. So just like any other component being built, like for example, when you write a unit test case, you'll be having a setup phase, arrange phase, act phase, assert phase, and then a tear down phase. When you build a UI component, you will be having a creation, post creation, rendering, post rendering, destroy, post destroy. It changes between UI frameworks. So what I'm telling here is there are multiple stages. I know only created, but if you go to Vue.js documentation, you can see what are all the stages available and when do you want to kick certain things in. And I'm telling, make sure that when this component is created, make a call to this API and get all the data, display this data here. So that's why I'm placing a call to food services, what we saw there, and calling the get items, and we are populating the items variable. The moment you populate the items variable, the items array will be filled. But how is it represented in UI? Is we have this view, we have this v for. V for is if you have worked with something called as a JSP or Mustache framework or any kind of Jinja Python framework. It is a way of templating engine where you can write for loops, if blocks, switch case statements and all. So you say that we have a for loop, and this for loop will execute for the number of items you have, and every item is made up of three different variable properties: item image URL, item name, and item price. And I'm using that for particular for image URL. I'm using the image tag. For displaying the item name, I'm using h5 tag, and price for p tag. That's how it's like self-explanatory. So I'm basically getting the items and iterating and populating this card. So that is how. So you should consider this component as one human being or one entity that will react for anything that changes. So when you populate the data over here, this is the same item I'm referring here in this for loop. These items, whatever the whatever you have defined here in this variables, that is the same thing I'm referring there. If you add something using a script, if you add something using a, for example, if I have a add item button here and I click that and add a new item by calling the post item endpoint, and still type the same variable, do it through UI, do it through script, do it through whatever means you have. If the variable is used anywhere in the component, it will be affected immediately. So there are a lot of anti-patterns here, which means that you cannot alter certain variables within certain code chunks. But what I'm trying to say here is, created is the phase in which I'm calling certain functions, and for our need we're calling the get items function, which will display the menu item and be ready. And then methods property will hold all the JavaScript method will be calling whenever we'll be doing certain actions on the UI screen. Add to order is called when I click the add to cart button. So when I click add to cart button, where exactly is this? Add to cart button is here. I'm calling the on click. These are all Vue way of doing things. If you take the Vue mastery course I mentioned before, you will be able to understand that in like 2 hours. And you call that, and then place the order is called when I click the place order button, and clean up previous order is called when once I add cart, click the close me button, I'll be calling the clean up previous order. And filters is what I didn't learn from Vue mastery, but later found out, because whenever I started adding these things together, the total was being built, but the decimal point was out of control. So I used something called as, looks like there's something called as filters, where you can format the data that is getting rendered. And then computer is a place where you can go ahead and let us see. Add to order and just increment in the order total. And computer is a place where you can actually compute on the fly events. For example, on a screen load, I'm telling this is a disabled button, and then when the first item is added, it becomes green in color, and that is done using this computer. It says that if the order length is equal to 0, disabled is true, which means it will be gray. If it is not 0 anymore, it is changed back to clickable button. So this is all this screen does, and I have used I have used v key is where you give individual component ID for every card. So if you choose a card and inspect it, every card will be having this ID. And then CSS style, so you get it right. So that's how the CSS is wired. So there are parts where I want to change. I want to display the order UID that comes back from DynamoDB here. I'll be working on that in the next episode. And finally, what we will be doing here is, we will be, as a last part of this whole series, we'll be working on this JS file where I will be, when I place the item, I actually call the post order item endpoint, whatever we created, and returning back order ID to this pop-up, and that will be the end of it. And then I'll be wiring this to the actual endpoints what we have here. And as a last step, we will be deploying this application to AWS Amplify. AWS Amplify is again a serverless component where It is just like a S3 static hosting, and it is free until a certain amount of GB downloads, and of course it is a serverless way of doing thing. AWS Amplify. It has a way of identifying the framework you're going to deploy. So it will identify itself that you're deploying a Vue.js application, and that will be the end of it. So that's it for the UI part of it. And I know it was more like kind of flaky because I was just doing it in my own way. I didn't learn the right way, but that's how it works. Thank you. Lambdas. So when you see the Lambda, what happened was when I was wiring up this UI for the demo purposes, I found out that in the developer tools, I got this issue where no allow access, access control allow origin header set kind of issues. So apparently, when you use Lambda proxy, looks like apart from status code and body, you need to specify the header property for it to work from a browser-based application. It will work from curl, it will work from your Postman, but it will not work from first-class browsers like Mozilla or Chrome, because they send something called as a pre-flight request, and it will go to the endpoint called as origins endpoint, options endpoint, and it should be giving it back access control allow origin, and if you don't specify that, you will be getting the issue. So just we don't have any UI for the adding item purposes, so I didn't add a header there. But for get items and create order, I have added the header required for CORS support to work. So this could be the exact domain for which you're writing. For example, if you're going to host this UI application in AWS Amplify, could be the exact domain where this Amplify is running. But mine is just a stop and start application. I'm not going to have it for a long running, so I just had it a start. But this is how you set it. It took a while for me to find this answer because it was not direct, and I mostly found this answer in a GitHub issue raised with AWS. But yeah, I want to mention that first. So for our application to work, we need to have data in the items table, because if you see the code base, so the list of items that is getting displayed here with the picture, description and price, that is happening now from an actual endpoint that is being served from AWS API gateway. So this API gateway endpoint, what you see here, has been wired, and we are calling the get items item endpoint, and whatever we get there, we are calling this get items on the created phase of the UI component and rendering that, and we are iterating using the for loop. So now it is all wired. So for me to get it ready, I just need to go to DynamoDB. You can do it two ways. You can either go ahead and call the post. You can do it two ways. You can either go to the database in DynamoDB directly and go to items, go to create item, and enter the ID, whatever it is. So if you see my item image URL, it all specifies as IBB because it's just a public hosting site what I'm using for hosting the images. You can choose your own option wherever you can host. You can even tag it to Unsplash or Pixabay based upon image repositories. But I'm using my own, I'm using a public cloud. I will add the link to that cloud in the description. So that's how I have added the image URLs, and these are all. So that's how, just go to create item. I chose text, pasted whatever I have in the db.json. Just copy one item from this and paste it there. That's how it is. I inserted. You can also call the post endpoint where you go ahead and call the create item endpoint what we have using Postman and get this done. The application what you have here is a bootstrap application, and bootstrap has this a grid layout where you have 12 columns. That is they divide the UI into 12 columns. And for you to develop, and it is a mobile first based design where the design is basically responsive, and whenever you change the resolution of the screen, the media queries kick in and it will stack up like a mobile phone or an iPad, bigger monitor, small monitor and all. So for that, this website shoelace.com.io, we right now we are at Bootstrap 4, 4 point something, but this is following 3, but nothing much has changed. I was one of my friend introduced this site in 2013, and still it works, and you can actually send feedback to this person. And this IO domain is really a costly domain wherever you buy it. I think it is like 13 bucks a month. We even been bought from all the cheapest domain providers. This guy is running it for free is what I think, or I don't know whether he has some kind of a sponsor. But usually how it goes is just go ahead and say that you want a screen like this. So what I have done is I'm going to have a screen of which majority of which will look like this will take the majority of the one. I mean this part, whatever you see here. And the second half will be a column by itself. So once you have this, you can extend it like that. And you can see it here. If it is viewed in the desktop, you will get the same look and feel. If viewed in tablet, same look and feel. But if it viewed in the phone, it will stack one below the other. But if you want to achieve the same look in all the devices, go back to the phone and resize it. Resize it like this. So say that in phone you want 8, and a 3 here. So now you have achieved the same kind of look in all the 4 different devices out there. And now you can go ahead and copy the HTML and put it into your HTML page. So a similar code can be found in our code base here. So what I have here is 12, and I have this SM9 and then SM3. That's the same thing. So you get the template from the shoelace and start putting a code inside that so that the look and feel is achieved. Shoelace is a wonderful website. It's like the brevity is really good, and you can actually go to other CSS generators. I mean the grid generators for Bootstrap in the for the modern day 4 point whatever it is. But I was not able to find a site like this because I used this in 2013, but now still it holds good. And yeah, you can try that. I'm going to show you the last few pieces that we will be wiring to make this whole thing really functional. So last time when we saw, we had this UI, we had this endpoint developed where we can place the order using line items and order total. So this is something running in my local. So if I want to add to cart and place the order, I have this model show up and the order number getting displayed here. This is the actual order that is wired right now, which means it is working over the net. I'm not calling any local functions. So this one, what you have here is called as a model. So if you go to the Bootstrap view, you can go to the component section and you can see how to easily incorporate the Bootstrap based CSS components into your Vue.js framework easily. So I just chose one of this model. This is the exact model I chose, and if you look at this, you'll my model will not be having this close button, and by default if you click outside you lose the control of the screen. So that will not happen in this. That is achieved using just with 2 pieces of code. If you see here, whatever I have copied and pasted here, you see no close on backdrop, hide header close. These are the two parameters that I use to hide the close button and also prevent the closure of the model when the button is not when we put the cursor outside the model and click in the background. By default the behavior is closing it. But for our application, if that is done, we lose a lot of state information and our order looks weird. So because when we place the order, the confirmation shows up, and when we want to close, we just close it by clicking the close button. And we use that action to clean up whatever was previously present on the screen. So what is happening here is when the close button is clicked, so this is the close me. When the close button is clicked, I am calling the cleanup previous order method, which I have here, and I'm just making all the variables whatever I want in this for this particular screen to be to the beginning state. I'm clearing all those things. So that is how I wired model. We can actually use the site for a lot more useful UI components. So I'm going to add the link to this bootstrap vue.org, and I believe I found these are the places. It is all available in the documentation. What you want to do with the model, every single property of the model that shows up is configurable. So I didn't even close this. I didn't even change the tag. I should change that to just close, just instead of using close me. And the order number, let us see how we are getting the order number. Let us go back to the code base. So whenever the add to cart button is pressed, the items are getting added to the orders array. And if you see the method add to order, whenever something is getting clicked, I'm adding that into the array. And just for keeping it simple, I'm not allowing to add more than 10 items to the array. So how many ever times you press after add the cart button after reaching the 10 limit, you won't really add anything. The order total doesn't change. And then when you are ready, that's it. That's how it works. So I'm not allowing to add more orders to it. So that's how it works. After adding 10 items, I will not be I should ideally be disabling this add to cart button, or I should be throwing some kind of alert, no more 10 items, but I'm not doing all those things here. So after clicking all these things, you will not be seeing any reaction in the order tab, the order column. Now let us see the place order function. So when the place order button is clicked, so place order button comes up here, the place the order. It will call the last post func method whatever we wrote. So this is the place order method. So I am building a JSON just the way how the post method requires it, and I'm sending it to the create order method. And in the create order method, I'm unboxing it, setting it to the post method and submitting it. And once that is submitted, I'm getting back a response, and I'm getting back the response by using the response.data.order number, because what I see here, so we know that this is the message that is being returned from the backend. Lambda endpoint returns this. So it has a body with a property order number, which has the exact order number, which is in turn we chose the AWS request ID as to be the order number, and we are sending that. So if you go back to the code base, we are getting the order number, and it is basically a UUID, but I'm just taking the last chunk of it after the hyphens and displaying that in the UI. So what you see here is actually an order that is getting created in DynamoDB. Create order and place the order, and what you see here, 1596 and 1596. So that is how this is wired. And once I have this order number, I am setting it to the views component, which is displayed in the model. So the model has the order number here, and the order total is also got fetched from the finalized total. That is all. That is how it is all wired, and this whole application is served from one component. It might be a bad practice, but that is our scope doesn't define that, because we are mostly seeing into the bigger picture of serverless, and yeah. So this is how it is wired. Let us go ahead and now deploy this application into AWS Amplify and finish this off. So we are going to use the product named AWS Amplify. What it says is everything you need to develop and deploy. You are going to use the deploy factor of it. So deploy says that build and deploy and host modern web apps. So we have this Amplify framework, and then we have this Amplify console. We are going to use the Amplify console. So if you go to, because when you want to develop, it's from the scratch. You can develop mobile applications just like I think it is like Google's functions and Firebase together. And for example, if this is what we're going to use, the deploy product. Go into the get started, and whatever changes I have made to the UI has been committed, and this is my UI repository. So go to AWS Amplify and say that this is the GitHub repository I'm going to use, and I'm going to continue. And the Amplify is smart enough to find out what kind of framework we have used. It can host just plain CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, or it can also host. It has the power. It has the capability to find whether it's a React framework or a Vue framework and how to command, because it's mostly npm build serve in almost all the recent frameworks. So I'm choosing the food truck. I've already authenticated using my GitHub. So if there is one step what I'm skipping here, which is not available to me right now, where you can go ahead and authenticate your GitHub so that Amplify can read from that. So go to this displays almost all. It displays all the repositories from my GitHub account. I'm choosing this, and so I have another one application running. I did it for my own purposes before I started the demo. So it's telling that this will also trigger that, but that is fine for us. So I'm choosing the application, and next. So this is the app name, and let me go ahead and choose demo, and then this is the build and test settings. Yeah, so it is going to run the npm CI, npm run build, the same exact command, because we know that the base directory is going to be dist, because when you run this particular command in our code base, it is going to create the dist folder. That's the reason it is doing the same thing, and we don't have any other thing like it running tests and all. So it has identified the framework as Vue. Auto detected using settings will be used, and then save and deploy. When you click the button, what it is going to do is, it's just like Jenkins pipeline, going to go to the GitHub repository, take in the whole folder into AWS Amplify's backend server. It's going to start executing the npm commands, and you can actually see what is going on by looking into the console log that is happening here. And then it will go to provision, build, deploy and verify. But once that is ready, this will be the place where the application will be hosted. It will take anywhere between 2 to 4 minutes is what I think for the initial first run. I'll come back. The total build duration was around 2 minutes, and if you go ahead and click this link now, our application will be rendered. The first render will be kind of a cold start, but once that is ready, whatever you see here is deployed over the internet, and you can have this DynamoDB ready. If you go ahead and add 4, 5, total for 1994 and place the order, the first will be a cold start, and anything else will be quick enough. 797, and then just pass the place order, close me, and then 2 more orders. So what you see here, if you go to DynamoDB and refresh it, these are all the things whatever we created right now from the application itself. So if you want to see the bootstrap in action, for example, if you just go ahead and you can start minimizing this and see how the columns are getting stacked. Let us try that. So it will go. Maybe this is the iPad resolution. At a particular point, this will become a mobile resolution, stacking down. As I showed you in the shoelace, everything is pushed down. This is really funky, and I didn't design it for a mobile. I will not even call this as a design because I'm not a UI developer. There are a lot of things I'm violating here. I know. I know myself. This is not exactly the modern way of developing web applications because there are much more decent way of putting things together. But this is how it works. I'm still yet to find out why I'm still seeing this close button, but I can demonstrate what I said before. If you go ahead and close it, the previous state stays there. It's a small bug, but when I tested it actually worked. So yeah, so if you close me, that's when we call the cleanup function, and the same behavior is working in my phone too. I tested in the phone and still I have the same issue. I need to figure out that, but that is how you host the application in AWS Amplify and render that to a world. And this whole video is about serverless components. AWS Amplify is not exactly free, but for the first 1,000 build minutes is free, and it's still a static hosting. But this is how you develop a end-to-end full stack application using AWS Amplify for UI, Lambda for doing the computation, DynamoDB for storing, and API gateway for exposing the Lambda functions as an API to the world. And I think I have done my best to cover most of the areas, and I have this idea of diving deep into components like how to debug a Lambda, how to set up test data and invoke Lambda function from locally, how to generate local events, and all those kind of stuff. But the scope of this whole tutorial is to just express how you can create an end-to-end full stack application with serverless. I mean, you get billed only for the usage. So if you don't know your customer base, if you don't know customer sentiments, and you have a good idea and you just want to float it without investing much, like running a 24/7 elastic beanstalk and paying like $100 for nothing, this is a very good way of exposing such applications. And let me know what you think. Thank you.